Welcome back. The family of Soleiman Faqiri, who died in an Ontario jail in December 2016, are looking for answers about why a loved one who struggled with mental illness ended up dead in prison just days after being taken into custody. Let's sit down and talk to Soleiman's brother, Yusuf Faqiri, about his brother, the circumstances around Soleiman's death, and his family's search for answers and closure. So Yusuf, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, thank you.
So tell me a little bit about Soleiman, your brother. Who was he? What kind of a person was he?
There's so many words to describe Soleiman, my younger brother. Happened to be his oldest brother. First of all, he was a beautiful man with so many gifts. My brother can be remembered for a lot of things, but the things that always stand out is his brilliance. He spoke 3 languages: Arabic, English, Farsi. But what's even more powerful than that is his devotion to his family, to his faith. He was so loving. And that's probably been the most profound void that we all feel. There's no words to quantify that love that emanated from his heart, but he had these gifts that he would walk in the room, he would be that light, that presence. But on top of that was the brilliance, always smiling. I never saw him not smile. But there's many other things to say. But
I think all of the pictures that I've seen are in media, or that there's this one picture of him and he's always smiling in all those pictures. So
absolutely. I always used to say to him, Soleiman, why do you smile? I was more serious of the way I said, Yusuf, because it's good. It makes people feel good, but I feel good when I smile. This is someone with so much adversity, so much agony, so much pain that he had every day in his life, but he had to smile, and for me it was personally inspirational every day when I saw that. A humbling time every time he articulated that.
So thank you for sharing that, Yusuf. Really appreciate it. Now, can you tell me a little bit? You mentioned there was a lot of challenges and an agony in Soleiman's life. Tell me a little bit about what that entailed.
So Soleiman was in his first year. He was going. Remember, I talked about his brilliance. He was going to University of Waterloo in their environmental engineering program. In his second semester, in his first year, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. This was in the spring of 2005, and shortly after this accident, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia.
So really briefly, can you explain to me what is schizophrenia, and within the context of Soleiman, how did it impact his life?
Well, schizophrenia is, for every case it's unique. Every case you can't pinpoint certain minutia, but it's some folks have hallucination, delusions, but these and mostly with men, they're usually diagnosed in their late teens and early 20s, whereas women, they're diagnosed in their late 20s, early 30s.
Okay. So now walk me to December 4th, 2016. What happened with Soleiman and the events leading up to that, after December 4th?
Soleiman was taken into custody on December 4th, 2016. He died on December 15th, 2016, after a physical altercation in which he was killed by guards at the Central East Correctional Centre in Lindsay, Ontario. The question that continues to baffle my family, I mean, there's multiple emotions where one can articulate, but that we continue to ask is, why was he cut out from the outside world in those 11 days? Why weren't we able to see him?
So what happened? Why? So you guys would, so after he was taken into the correctional facility, there were times where you guys tried to go see him and you were denied? Absolutely.
There's a couple key things to take here. My family, my parents tried to see Soleiman a few times.
Following December 4th?
Following December 4th. They were denied permission every single time, effectively. I myself, with my younger brother, went and tried to see him once as well. We were denied permission.
Were you given a reason?
To this day, we have not been given a reason as to why we weren't able to see Soleiman.
So you went and they said, no, you can't see him.
You can't see him. We weren't able to see him. What makes this even more problematic is that in my conversation, the fact that he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, the staff at the facility were aware of this. But I myself, when I went there on that one occasion, I articulated to staff that Soleiman had a medical condition. They were aware of this. But why cut him from the outside world for those 11 days? Why take something from someone that every human being has a right to, and that's their dignity? And they took that away from him. This happened right in our backyard in Lindsay, Ontario. This is something that we have to think about. You know, someone who is vulnerable, someone who has a medical condition, why was he not able to see his beloved mother or his father or his brothers? Where's the humanity in that?
When you say he was cut off from the world, I remember reading an article saying they had actually placed him in solitary confinement. Is that the information that you were given as well?
So there's been media reports that, there's been several media reports that Soleiman was restrained. He was in segregation. He was pepper sprayed. These have been multiple media reports.
Segregation meaning?
It's the same thing as solitary confinement.
Okay.
This is to someone who has a mental illness. The question comes back to that important word, why? Why?
And how did you find out about all this information? Did you get calls? Did you get a call from the facility? Did officers come and talk to you about, how did you come up with get this information?
So the night that the day that Soleiman died, the police came to our house. They just relayed the information that your son has died to my mom and father. But in terms of the information about the segregation, the restraint that we got here from media reports, this information has been relayed effectively by the media. That in itself, to be frankly honest, anybody who's listening, that's quite shameful. As Ontarians, as Canadians, we have to think about that quite clearly and quite thoughtfully, because why have we not been given that? You know, where is the aspect of respect that this family deserves, right? It's one thing to lose a family member, right? That in itself is an immense pain. But what makes this effectively even more difficult, and to be frankly honest, quite agonizing, is why are we left in the dark? That's something to think about, in my opinion.
What information do you have as of today, April 8th, 2017, about Soleiman's death?
So here's a couple of things. We do know that what has been articulated to the family is that there was a physical altercation with Soleiman, between him and the guards. That altercation, he died as a result of that altercation. Use of force was applied by him, by the guards. Why would you apply use of force to a mentally ill person? That's another question to begin with. We don't know what led to the event. Now, we approach 16 weeks as of Thursday. So we're approaching 4 months since his death. We don't know the name of the guards. We don't know what led to the events. We were told by the Kawartha Lakes Police Service that the investigation would conclude once the coroner's report would end, and that they said that the coroner's report would effectively be concluded at end of March. But recently we've been given the information that from the coroner's office through our communication with our lawyer is that the coroner's report will be done in June. And
you just recently got that information?
That information has been given recently, yes.
But you were informed,
through our lawyers, yeah.
Who were you informed with? You were informed by someone else that you would get the report by the end of March, and now you're being told? Yeah,
the police said that the coroner's report would be done end of March, but because here's the organ of government, the police, and the other organ of government, the coroner's report. Now coroner's report is telling us in June. Why is the police saying? Why is the police saying that it's going to be done in March, but then the coroner's report is now saying it's going to be done, coroner's office is going to be done in June. But here, let's pause here for 1 second here. I think it's important. This is what's critical to think about as well. The coroner's report will only determine the medical cause of death. We obviously know the physical cause of death of Soleiman. I will take you back to the day that we buried him, when his body was released. There was a huge gash in his forehead, right? There's marks, there's bruises. It's often hard not to cry when I think of that image. But so we obviously know the physical cause of death was this altercation with the guards. But the police is saying that we're not going to conclude the investigation until we get the medical cause of death. Why? You have the physical cause of death, but you want to continue to instill poison in my family. For me, the pain pales in comparison to the pain that my mother goes through every day, or my father goes through every day. But we're wondering, why are you waiting for the medical cause of death? We obviously know the physical cause of death.
So have you asked these questions of the police through your lawyers or directly? And
these conversations have been articulated.
And what are they saying?
To be honest, we don't have that information. We haven't been given that information. We're going to conclude the investigation once the coroner's report is done.
Now, obviously there's this huge piece of justice against Soleiman that is a huge issue right now that your family's facing with. I want to shift the conversation a bit to a Maclean's article that I had read that said there's a crisis of mental health in Canadian prisons. How true do you think this is, based on your own experience and what you've encountered?
So I've been reading some media reports, with respect to this, and I think there's a couple things to keep in mind here. In the last 4 months, according to these media reports, since December, there's been 4 individuals that have died, that have allegedly have had mental illness that have died in custody. Justin Saint-Amour, Cass Caris, Moses Beaver, and my beloved brother Soleiman Faqiri. That's something to think about. 4 months, 4 deaths. These are people that have families, right? I think it's important for us to think about the fact when you have 4 deaths in 4 months, what do you think? I think this is something for us to keep in mind.
And the correctional facility that Soleiman was held in, I also came across another article that said this was the most complained about facility in the fiscal 2015-16. So what do you, I know it's a very difficult question to answer, but just what are the first few thoughts that come to mind?
I mean, there's this number that I always think about when I think of the Central East Correctional Center. 637 complaints according to the Ombudsman.
In the last year?
In the last year, the year that you just articulated.
637.
637 is the number around that. And my thoughts is, okay, what recourse was done when there's these complaints? Like, why? Why is this jail the most complained? Why did a man who had a family, who had aspirations and dreams like everyone else, why did he lose his life in the very institution that was supposed to take care of him? In the very area that was supposed to be someone that could help him. Instead, he was buried. 16 weeks later, the pain and the agony continues. Why? These are questions that as a society as a whole we have to keep in mind. We have to ask, as Ontarians, as Canadians, because this is something that we have a right to have knowledge of. I mean, we deserve answers, but why haven't we been given it?
I know you're rallying up a group to, answer these very questions. Tell me very briefly about the Justice for Solly movement.
There's been often the last 4 months, it's been difficult to smile, but it's, as people say, Yusuf, you've rallied the group. I say, no, it's the inspiration that these individuals have given me. And it's one of the few times I usually smile throughout this agony and anguish. We've had students from the University of Toronto, McMaster University, University of Western Ontario, and other universities that will be involved as well, that they've created this Justice for Solly movement. And they've been doing a lot of work. There was one day where they called students for both from McMaster and University of Toronto downtown campus. They called the different organs of government asking what happened to Soleiman. But these students also continue to be right at the forefront with respect to Soleiman's story. And I think the reason why these individuals have been inspired is because they get it in that this could have happened to anyone. They get the fact that this is something that we all have a stake in. But more than anything, this is a public issue. And these students are, these individuals are with so much gifts, so much abilities, and I've learned from them.
And you have students rallying from all walks of life, right?
Absolutely, from different backgrounds, different perspectives, different veins of thought, and that in itself is quite powerful. That's the biggest difference maker. They're passionate, they're compassionate, they're able to be empathetic in hearing the plight of my beloved brother.
You just mentioned, that this is a public issue. So for someone who's hearing Soleiman's story for the first time, at the end of the day, what are you looking for?
For me, you know, we want justice for Suleiman. We want the individuals that were accountable, that caused Suleiman's death to be brought accountable. I mean, that's our right. I mean, I think that's something we deserve, and we deserve that right. But why have you been left in the dark? The silence is deafening. These individuals need to be accountable for the death of my brother. And I think that's a fair question from anybody's perspective.
And on a sort of a broader goal as well, what are you hoping to achieve through Suleiman's story?
I want people to understand that mental illness is a matter that affects all walks of life, affects all paths of life, affects folks from different perspectives, different visions. This is something that we all have a stake in. And the time is now for us to play a fundamental role in terms of creating that story. I say we because this is something that affects us all in this country, in which we call Canada.
Just as we wrap up, one final, I guess, what's the one thing that you want everyone watching to do? What's one way that they can help contribute, make a difference, do something that you think will help?
I think, you know, before I say that, I think I want people to think about this one question, you know, in terms of the help and everything, is that Suleiman, like everyone else, had aspirations and dreams. Suleiman, like everyone else, had a family. Suleiman, like everyone else, was a human being. He was an uncle. He was a brother. He was a son. You have to ask yourself this important question, and anybody who's listening. What kind of society do we live in when a mentally ill man is killed under the care of the state and the family does not outrageously get answers 16 weeks after his death? What is that kind of society when we as Canadians think about that? What's happening to us is unconscionable, outrageous, and to be frankly, quite honest, disappointing. Anyone who's listening, I ask, please open your heart. Open the compassion that emanates from your heart and share our story. This could have happened to anyone. This could have happened to anyone. And this is something for us to think about.
So Yusuf, where can people go to learn more information about the Justice for Soli movement?
So members of the public have also created a petition with respect to Suleiman's death, but we have a Facebook page called the Justice for Soli page, and there's updates with respect to his case. And there's, there's different events going on. The movement will be having another event in a couple of weeks. And there's also this page you could also follow interviews and see if you can get involved, because there is members of the organization that could basically get your assistance.
I know this was obviously a difficult story to share and a difficult conversation, so I really appreciate you taking the time and coming out. And definitely hope and pray for justice for your family and Suleiman. So thank you so much, Yusuf.
Thank you very much, Aisha.
Hey YouTube, we hope you benefited from this video. If you liked it, or if you didn't, let us know in the comments below. And if you're interested in learning more, check out some of our other videos. And don't forget to subscribe so you can get new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.